All right, everyone. Welcome to today's episode on the Good in the Head podcast. Today we have a special guest. His name is Pripo Teplitsky. Is that right?
You got Teplitsky. Yep.
Teplitsky. All right. And I actually accessed his content and himself through Instagram messaging back and forth. And then we started emailing. And I did a lot of research on you, my friend, and I have a lot more to do. And what I found was phenomenal. The thing that I appreciated most about you is as soon as I reached out, you got right back with me, which
Mm.
indicates to me that you have something incredibly important to share with the world. And I actually believe that after looking at some of your content. So thank you so
Mm.
much for being a guest on the show today.
I really appreciate you reaching out, and I'm glad that we're able to arrange it and hook it up so quickly.
Yeah, me too. I
Mm.
think that what you have to share today will empower others in so many ways. You specialize, from what I understand from your website, especially, and some of the podcasts I listen to, in communication, appreciation, and tools to upgrade not only the self, but just as important, communication and relationships with others as well. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, that is. And I'd like to emphasize the upgrade within ourselves, because if we can't bring an authentic self, an integral self, then we can't bring that into our relationship. So when people ask me, couples come to me as a couples therapist, and they say, we really want to communicate better so that we'll connect. And I get that. But what I really tell people is you really need to connect in order to communicate better. So I really work with them of what is connection, because if I'm not connected, I can say the most beautiful nonviolent communication sentence out there, but it could go awry. But if I'm connected with somebody, I could say stupid stuff and I'm fine. So it's figuring out what connection is. And one part for me in my life and in my relationship with my wife and the work that I do is around appreciation, really connecting on that level and scanning of what is working, what you value, so that your communication can come out that way instead of judgment, lack, criticism.
That's beautiful. Um, Before we get into connection with others, I want to dive a little deeper first into connection with self, the true self, and
Yeah.
different ways that anybody can do that, different practices or beliefs or perspective shifts that we can make in order to think about ourselves in a different way so that we can truly love and accept and appreciate ourselves and have more to give, sort of fill up our glass, so to speak, so that there's an overflow. um, what are some tools that you've come across?
Well, I think the biggest tool is self-compassion. If we don't have compassion for ourselves, and we're going to have that inner critic really loud, we're going to be spiraling into more shame. And my experience is when we experience shame, which is different than guilt. Shame is more about I'm a bad person. Guilt is more that I did a bad thing, my behavior. I experience when people, especially men, we have a tendency to spiral more into shame, but it doesn't come out that way. It usually comes out in anger and blame and withdrawal and stonewalling. And we can't take accountability and responsibility when we feel shame. It's just too painful. So if the antidote to that is self-compassion, I'm a human being. I do stupid stuff. I know that I made a mistake. Yesterday, I had a better thought. I know I can do better. Working the emotional ladder up in self-compassion enables us to take accountability and responsibility. So that, I think, is a really important aspect, is to have that relationship with oneself. If you have self-compassion, that's a precursor, of course, to self-love, to self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is very important, to think about the things that I have done in the past that I can do similar stuff in the future. And hopefully that's something good, something that if I messed up talking to somebody, yelled, which I actually just did to my wife about a half hour before I go on a show about a relationship and appreciation. My wife has some physical ailments, and she injured herself, and she wants to go for a walk in the forest while I'm doing this podcast with you. and there's a branch that's leaning down in the pathway. And she said she's going to just go there, but she's got to lift up the branch. And she's going to, in my opinion, she's going to hurt herself more by doing that. And I got frustrated with her and I said, don't walk that way, walk in a different direction. And she said, no, I want to go to my secret beach where I love and sit by the stream. And I started getting um, elevated because afterwards I realized I had fear. If she hurts herself, I'm up here, I can't get her. Also, I've got to do more stuff if she continues to hurt herself. The responsibility is more on me, and I couldn't understand why she would jeopardize that. And I went out with a sawed off the branch, came back up here, apologized to her. But I realized some of that was my feeling of inadequacy, which shows up for men. The feeling of inadequate, like I'm not providing you the right environment for your safety. And if the safety was fine, then I could be okay. And that activated my feeling of shame. And I had to recognize, I'm a pretty good partner and pretty good husband. And I went down and I did saw that off, and I came back and I apologized twice to make sure that she knew that she didn't deserve that energy. So I just put that out, that little example. One part is in the work that I do and how I disclose. I'm not going to hide behind some cushion chair and be some counselor up in the sky. I'm a human being trying to navigate through relationships in this world just like everybody else, but I'm a little more heightened in my awareness because I focus on this every day. So hopefully I'm walking my talk or doing the things that I say during the day. And so I try to catch myself more often.
The thing that sparked something within me was the fact that all of that, the entire interaction, the shame, the action you took to rectify it, everything, the frustration, the fear, it came from a place of love.
That's right. Yeah. Displaced, but it came from love. It came from care. And unfortunately, most people would just stop there, right? We stop and say, okay, I'm going to make an excuse for my behavior. Hey, I love you. That's why I treated you really shitty, And and I
Guilty,
think
man.
that,
Guilty.
yeah,
I've done
right. Exactly.
it.
Instead of realizing like, okay, that comes from love, but that is not love. At least for me, I
Yeah.
recognize that's not a loving behavior. And so I can say that it is, but I'm missing the point of now bringing that into action. And the more that we bring that into action, that increases our self-efficacy. I just went ahead and actually acted in love. I Another quick story was when we were going to the one of her naturopaths a few weeks ago. We were in the driveway, and my wife asked me to go get some things out of the house 3 times, right? That she forgot. The third time, I shut the door a little hard and grumbled and walked in the house and came back, and my wife just looked at me and said, "Could you just be more loving to me today?" And she said it just like that. And that's what we've agreed upon. We want to tell each other what we want each other to do, not what we don't want.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if she would have said, you're not acting loving to me, why aren't you doing that? I would get defensive because I would feel that shame. Instead, she just said, "Could you act more loving to me today?" And I just bowed my head, and like, "Oh, you're so right." And I looked down, Pete, and I had a t-shirt on with huge letters that said, "Be kind." I'm wearing a freaking billboard, and I wasn't kind in that moment, but I caught it. And I
That's
apologized and I was kind. And it's springboard off of the behavior. If we do that more, we recognize that we don't have to spiral in it. We just springboard off of it, catch it quickly, and be more consistent at it.
so on our direct spiral downward, we can literally springboard up out of that downward spiral at any moment. And the quicker, the better, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I think that, I do a practice because it is difficult when I call it hijacked. We're
Mm.
hijacked and we're in the limbic system and there's all these reactions, but we need to practice that ahead of time. It's very difficult to do it what I call it in game time, game time to really catch ourselves. It's very difficult. So I do practices of visualization. I visualize, I will take a conflict like the one I just told you, And I would just sit down with it, and I would vividly replay it in my mind. And right at the point where what I went off, I did something or said something that wasn't serving, wasn't loving. Right at that moment, right before that, I can feel the activation. And that's when I bring myself down in my mind's eye. And then in my mind's eye, I say or do something that's a little bit better, a little more loving, something that I would be proud of myself that I did. And now I play that new movie over and over and over again. I actually reprogram my automatic response. So now my body doesn't know the difference between reality and visualization. It believes that Pripo just acted the way that I was thinking about over and over. So the next time a similar circumstance comes up, I'm going to have a split second of choice: old behavior or new behavior. The new behavior has just been in my mind over and over again. I'm creating a new neural pathway for that behavior to take place. So that's one way that I change my negative automatic responses, because I know that it needs to be practiced. And we need to do it when we're not hijacked, so then we recognize when we are. A lot of people wait till they do it during the situation. I call it game time. Can't do it during game time. You're too hijacked. Right.
Yeah, I know I can't. That's
Right.
for sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I love visualization practices. I'm going to have to try this one out in order to implement new behaviors. And something else that I also do during meditation and visualization is I'll listen to the same binaural beat music over and over, and then I'll get my favorite scent throughout and after, and I'll smell that. And it's
Hmm.
interesting because I could be ready to just lose my shit one day, and next thing I know, bam, I'm in the flow because I'll smell that, or I'll just
There you
listen to
go.
that music for a moment. But
Yeah.
to create neural pathways within the brain that are, I mean, repetition begets mastery.
That's
You know?
right. Yeah. A belief system is just a thought that we thought over and over and over again. If you want to change your belief system, just think another thought over and over again. But the smell that you said, the memory, the mind's eye and the body has such a memory with the olfactory gland. So just the smell in that meditation that you did, with connecting it with visualization, the smell will probably come up in your visualization to calm you down. So even that practice would be really good when you put those two together. I had a baseball career early in my life. That was a big part of my high school career, and I played in college, and that when you're playing a sport on that level too, there's a lot of visualization that takes place, but there's a lot of practice. You practice. If the ball's hit over there, where do you go? And you practice that over and over and over, because when game time does come and there's all this crowd and the anxiety, you can't think. You have to automatically go there. And from that experience of doing that a lot of my life, that's where I thought, why can't I do it emotionally? If I could do it from a physical stance, from a sports sense, why can't I just utilize visualization from an emotional standpoint to automatically respond emotionally the way that I want to? So another way that I use is like the exposure therapy. When there's, let's say, a word or a saying that is triggering,
Mm.
if we get exposed to it, we can bring ourselves down to it. My wife is Danish, and she had a way in the past of using a Danish word that would be nine, 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 nine. That's no, 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 no. And I felt like a little kid being kind of, punished for it. And that used to trigger me a lot. So one day I said, hey, let me record that 999. She finally got the exact 999 that bugged me. And I then sat down, pressed the record, felt the activation from 1 to 10. Ooh, it was up there like a 9, 10. And then I just breathe, relax my body. I'd hit it again. And I would just keep hitting it until my activation was like a 3. The next
Wow.
day I would try it again. Ooh, it went up to 7. After a week, I'd hit that sucker. I wouldn't be activated. So that's a
Wow.
way, to be able to use our our sensations of our body with conscious awareness to be able to change a behavior that we want.
That is an incredible tool.
Yeah.
Absolutely going to be implementing that one. That's, I've
Yeah.
since a little boy, I was always told, don't respond, don't react, don't speak, just please others. And that was the messaging that I received.
Mm,
And it's not so much that that's what my mom wanted me to believe. That's what I took it as, So I misperceived some teaching she was giving me, and that's the messaging that I instilled within myself. So I became very opposed to any kind of interaction that was loud or negative or, anxiety producing. And that hasn't served me very well in my life. Anytime somebody gets in my face or, you know, causes anxiety or anger within me, I overreact now because I
yeah,
never really learned the tools and the skills to simply respond in
that's
kindness
right.
and love and
Yeah.
with a
Or
full processing system.
and even before that is just witness, because before we can act in kindness and love, sometimes we just need to hold and witness somebody else's anger or frustration, right? And there's we call it codependency, but another word is enmeshment.
Mhm.
And there's a difference between enmeshment and differentiation. So an example that you just gave is, let's say you're with another person. I'll speak to me. If my wife gets activated and she gets upset, I get activated. I rise with her. So usually what we do is we try to bring the other person down. Like, I'm sorry, or I didn't do that. Mom, I'm sorry, right? And the real reason we think that we want to bring that person's anxiety down. The real reason is if they come down, we come down. So the differentiated part is they rise, we bypass them, and we self-soothe ourselves with breath, with any other self-soothing tool, put our hand on our chest. So now we can witness their emotion and it doesn't affect us as much. And we can allow them to have their experience without us having to change it, which also means without us people pleasing in that way.
It's truly a compassionate act.
Yeah, it is.
You mentioned self-soothing, breathing practices, putting your hand on your heart. What are some other good, effective self-soothing tools?
Yeah. Uh, in the moment, self-soothing tools, I think, are that deep breathing, especially through the nostrils, in and out of the nostrils, because that engages what's called the vagus nerve directly into the parasympathetic nervous system, the relaxation. Anytime we put a hand on our own body, it automatically brings cortisol levels down. And if you get touched by a safe person, that happens also. So we're getting those cortisols kind of like that dump really fast. So we really want to bring that down. So a hand on the chest, hand on the stomach. Sometimes I think what's really beneficial too is a hand on the forehead. And the reason for that is when we are kind of hijacked in that automatic response, the blood flow actually goes to the amygdala, the limbic system part of the brain, which is back here. The frontal neocortex is the rational thinking part of the brain. Whenever you put a hand on a part of the body, the blood flow goes there. So if we put a hand just here, it's bringing the blood flow to that part of the brain. Just breathing for a
Really?
minute or so. Yeah, just I like to put my hand on the back of my head too, just to relax so it doesn't feel straining, and just breathing there for a while. And when I just breathe there for a while with my hand on there, and it gives me that extra boost from breathing, and then when I take my hand off, I feel a little lightheaded. And one reason is again that blood flow is going there, and now I'll have a little bit more agency to respond because now it's the rational part. But human beings do that naturally. We go, holy crap, oh my God. We're trying to bring ourselves out of shock. That's what we're
Interesting.
doing automatically, right? So we're trying to bring that blood flow there. So that's a way to self-soothe. When we have more efficacy, we can realize right in the moment that not to feel the shame, not to feel the fear, and we can like just be here. I call it being comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? As a meditator, you might know like when you're sitting and meditating, it's not so comfortable at times, whether it's thoughts that are going through or physically. If we adjust constantly, we're going to keep adjusting as opposed to, all right, it's really uncomfortable. I got to scratch my nose, but I'm not going to scratch my nose. I'm going to be interested in the sensation of what's going on. And then all of a sudden, it becomes comfortable. I just moved past the uncomfortable stage. Sometimes we don't do that when we're in the emotional realm with somebody else. It's so uncomfortable that we have this impulse to defend ourselves or to walk out, or as opposed to like to stay, come on, boy, stay, that type of. So that's a way that we can self-soothe, to just get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And then there's other self-soothing techniques that might take us to where we have to just take ourselves away and go for a walk, splash water on our face. Um, I think a really good one is actually shaking and making noise, because the moment of, we call it the little t, the trauma that's taking place is getting locked in the body. If I shake, I'm moving the energy. We hear that all the time. Hey man, shake it off, shake it off. But we don't shake it off, right? This is a saying, but we don't actually do it. And you might be familiar with Peter Levine. He did a lot of work in somatic experiencing, and he talks about in one of his books, I think it's called Waking the Tiger, where when a prey gets away from their predator, the automatically it shakes. The animal shakes off the experience and the trauma. It doesn't let it stay and locked up in the body.
Hmm.
Human beings, we don't do that. So we have so many different experiences of trauma that just start stacking and stacking and stacking in the body. And I will tell you that if you start shaking, and even a little noise like blah, when you shake, you're going to move some of that energy in the body. It's in the body. Emotions don't hang out in the air, they're in the body. We
Huh.
just need to move them. Yeah.
That's another one I'm going to have to try out. I
Yeah.
really think that that would help, honestly. I
Hmm.
remember washing my dog a while back, and it traumatizes her. And immediately she'll shake throughout the
Right.
entire bath. And I didn't put that together until you mentioned that, and we are energetic, vibrational beings housed within a physical, chemical, hormonal machine. And to be able to shake it off is almost like moving that energy and providing pathways through the body for the energy to flow again.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've had some pain in my neck and in the neck throat chakra, and I'm really trying everything I can. Diet changes, massage, exercise, stretching, meditation, trying to send healing energy to it. Maybe all I need is a good shake. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not going to be your chiropractor and tell you that shake that neck out there. But I think, also, as a therapist, one therapeutic aspect is to talk or write to your neck from your neck, like have a conversation.
Hmm.
Hey, you're a pain in the neck. Like, what's going on? Why are you giving me this pain? I've tried many things. And then go ahead and maybe move your chair a little bit so it's not in the same energy field, and then write the answer. When I say write the answer, don't even think about it. Sometimes we say, hey, use your dominant hand for the answer, because your non-dominant hand, cannot write these tricky, eloquent things. It has to come right to the point, you know. So writing with your dominant hand with a question and your non-dominant hand with the answer, back and forth between you and your neck. And that can be an interesting experience too. Some things might come up.
That gives you a lot of extra time to really process and think while you're trying to write in a way you never have. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. I think too often we don't trust our inner intuition and ourselves, and we come up with these quick, or we feel that we have to really sit with the answer. I think it's really good to like what pops up. That's when I tell people, when you are answering an emotional answer, how are you? It's great to say a part of me feels, because there's all these parts. A lot of times we feel like, oh, I got to come up with one answer. Um, I'm upset, or I'm angry, or I'm the biggest lie human beings say 4 times a day. I'm fine. That's another one.
I lie all day
Right.
long.
Right. As opposed to go, a part of me feels a little tired. Part of me feels anxious. Part of me feels little melancholy. Part of me is excited. I can have 5%, 30%, 40% on each one. That they're all happening within me. But I can give permission for those to come out if I use a part of me. And I think that's a great tool too, to be able to be emotionally transparent with ourselves, yeah, and with
So
others.
you're saying it's okay to be honest with others about how we truly feel. And the way to do that is a useful way to do it, to connect well with others, is to say a part of me feels and then tell your truth.
Right. When I hear that from somebody else, I know that they're not wedded to one of those feelings. And then one, it's an inspiration. It's like, wow, yeah, I can feel all of those. Another part is, wow, they're actually scanning themselves, and there's uh, a maybe a part of me that feels trusting of them because they're actually doing it. I don't have to scan them. I don't have to guess what's behind. Oh, you say that you're fine. You don't look fine. You don't act fine. I don't have to guess it. They're telling me, yeah, a part of me feels this, a part of me feels that. So there's an emotional transparency that creates trust in that when I'm in relationship with somebody. For myself, when I do that, I'm actually creating intimacy with myself because I'm self-disclosing in front of somebody else. Therefore, I'm being intimate with myself. If they return it, great. We have shared intimacy. If they don't, oh well,
That's fine too.
I've got my intimacy with myself.
And you're speaking your truth.
That's right. Yeah. And that when we say a part of me, that's a great point because I have a phrase I say, speak your truth and find your truth as you're speaking. That's one way. If I start speaking and I'm like, I don't know if I'm really hitting it right, I can adjust it as I'm speaking instead of thinking I've got to prepare my truth beforehand. No, as I'm speaking, I'll find my truth. Well, no, that's exactly not how I really feel. Let me tell you how I feel. And I can do it while I'm talking.
Now, you've habituated quite a few practices that has resulted in an inner grounding and calmness and inner realignment connection that's always happening with yourself that empowers you to be able to effectively communicate and respond, even in high energy situations, game time, in other words.
Yeah.
And so I can see how visualization would really help out with that in
What
practice.
and the self-compassion comes in because, like I just told you, about a half hour ago, I didn't do it. You know,
Yeah.
being a baseball guy, when you foul 7 out of 10 times, you're a multi millionaire. You're batting 300. You're doing great. So I tell people, you're not going to hit the bullseye all the time, and
Nice.
that's the thing. Like, you know, perfectionism. Shame is the seeds of perfectionism in that way. Like, we have to be careful about. We're not going to hit it all the time, but when we recognize that we don't, or that we can adjust, that's being a human being. So doing more of the practices just enable us to have more of the efficacy to know that we can do that in the future, that we have that capability. And when I work with people in a relationship, I always tell people it's an inside job. It's an individual inside job. We've got to work on all of these things because my response to whoever I'm in a relationship with is what I can manage and control. I can't control what they say or what they do, but I have a lot of management by my response to what they say and what they do. Because let's say my wife, well, I always give this example and she never calls me an asshole, but if she did, I think I would give a response maybe back in that way. I'm going to get then a certain response. But if she called me that and I said, wow, that really hurts, I'm going to get a different response back from her. So my response is so influential. So I tell people, focus more on about your responses to the situation, not about the situation. And this is what we're talking about. It takes a real inside job to do all these things, to be able to recognize that you have that agency, to be able to take the breath and the self-soothing to actually respond in another way, and to keep responding in this mutual dependence in a relationship, not in a codependent way.
What would you say to somebody who spent 30 or 40 years of their life practicing and honing skills that have completely disempowered and devastated them and shattered them and made them live a life of hopelessness and depression, and they just feel so lost and they don't even want to go on anymore?
Well, I would say that this is a journey. I mean, I love that John Lennon saying, in and I'm going blank on the John Lennon saying right now. It will be fine in the end. It will be okay in the end. And if it's not the end, if it's not okay, then it's not the end. That's the saying, right? It'll be fine in the end. And we have to recognize that this is a journey and this is a path. And we have to trust in our life's path. So when we start recognizing we've been behaving, having thought processes that no longer serve us, then there's a certain energy that we can change. What I mean by that is, let's say some people in the past, they needed to be angry, and they were constantly angry. One reason why they were probably angry when they were younger is they had to protect themselves.
Mm.
And that was one way that, anger is putting out a controlling an external threat, an external behavior. So that was the way that they survived. They can recognize, I no longer need that way to survive, but that energy, that helped me. That made me survive. It's kind of like giving that part of ourselves a different job description. Okay, you have a lot of energy, but you know what? The way that you're acting is not serving me anymore. We're going to put you in that office and give you that new job. You're tenacious. You're protecting. Now protect me in a different way. So I would just say that we can shift and change when we recognize the things that we're doing and the way that we're thinking and behaving is no longer serving us. How do we want to serve ourselves? And that comes also with self-compassion, because if we lived a life of depression or other things that have taken away from the way that we want to live, we do have to have compassion for ourselves, that we definitely didn't do that purposely. We did that out of wound, out of trauma. And like addiction, I'm not an addiction specialist, but a lot of addiction, the basis of that is trauma. And we have to recognize we have to get to the core of understanding of the trauma that created this situation to go ahead and create a life of substance use or ruin and so forth like that. So I would just tell people that I know that people don't like to hear that part of hope, but man, I like to hope. I like to know that things can change. My experience in my life, things have changed on a sometimes on a dime. So we have to have that faith in our life's path in that way.
David R. Hawkins created something called the map of consciousness, where 0 is you're dead, you're not vibrating at any conscious level. I think it was right around 18 is hopelessness. 1000 is the peak level where you're in Buddha consciousness or Christ consciousness, like vibrating at the highest possible level within this physical body. Now, right above hopelessness, there's anger. And right above anger, there's hope. And then it's like climbing a staircase,
Yeah.
to kind of get out of the darkness and into a spot where it's a little more light. But it's not an overnight process,
Yeah.
and it takes a while. So
Yeah. And I recognized I did a couple podcasts on anger, and I recognize underneath anger or before anger is usually a feeling of hopelessness and stuckness. And we don't recognize stuckness. We kick it into gear. We recognize frustration, but frustration is like revving the engine, and anger is kicking that sucker into gear. So we need to recognize the stuckness and the hopelessness and stay there a little bit more, because when we stay there, there's some sadness that comes up. And sadness is a key to overcoming anger. Most people can recognize, if they really dig deep, when they're really angry, there's something that they're sad about. There's something that there's a grief, that there's a loss of hope, there's a loss of a dream, there's a loss of an expectation. And instead of us getting angry about that, if we stay with some of the sadness, then we're really dealing with the emotional aspect of a human being, not just going into anger.
I heard something empowering in your answer, and that is that if we are to experience a brighter future and have something to hope for, we need to take full 100% responsibility for our lives and up-level our skills uh, periodically and progressively in order to make that happen. Like our
Yeah,
life is our own creation.
exactly. What other game in town is there? what is it? Is it
I like it.
Star Trek that says, to boldly go where no man has gone before? Well, guess what? For me, no man has gone into me before. I'm me. Nobody knows me except me. And if I don't explore myself, then that's a life that unexamined life that is kind of a loss,
Wow.
definitely a loss. So I do think that if we get past again the shame or the guilt around that of our actions or our thoughts and be more curious, because that's the part. If I'm more curious and interested in my dynamic, my thinking, my messed up way of behaving, I'm going to be more curious of other people that I'm in a relationship with. It's a direct hologram of that. So that curiosity of myself is going to help me tremendously in relationship. So when somebody gets angry or so forth, instead of me getting defensive, maybe I can get curious. Wow, you just got angry when I said that. What's going on for you? Instead of me being reactive. So the more that I'm curious, and also Pete, when I am more comfortable with the emotions in my own world, my emotions, I'll be comfortable with other people's emotions. It's absolutely a direct correlation. If I'm not comfortable with my own tears, the hell if I'm going to be able to be present with somebody else's tears, right? So the
Wow.
more that we're comfortable with our emotions, we'll give people the room and capacity to have theirs. That's why with anger, we're not comfortable with our own anger. So when somebody else gets angry, we get angry at them. As opposed to if I was really comfortable with my anger and go like, yeah, it's a hard emotion. I feel threatened. I'm sad. If I'm really, really comfortable with it, then when somebody gets angry at me, I'll be able to hold that space a little longer. So that's what I think is part of this deep dive into ourselves, is how that will benefit us being in relationship with others, is getting comfortable with our feelings so that we can be comfortable with others' feelings and emotions.
So self-awareness, there's something on my website on goodinthehead.com called the Self-Awareness Challenge, where I put out tons of questions. So it's an opportunity for people to basically write down answers to a lot of different questions to become more self-aware. And I've found that useful for me. And everyone that's tried it out has reached out and said, whoa, I didn't know that about myself. Now I know what I need to do to expand into who I want to be.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
my sister said something that made everything that you said just fall into place for me so beautifully. She told me the other day, we can only meet others at the level which we are capable of meeting ourselves.
That's true. Yeah. I totally believe that too. That's right.
There was a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that I love. He said, that our view, our perception of others and all things is actually a confession of character.
Mm,
So when someone's coming at us pretty intensely, being able to remember that it's all about them and where they're at in this moment and being able to hold that space for them to just express it all, that is such a challenge sometimes, especially in a relationship
yeah.
where you've given all to your spouse or your loved one or your partner, open your heart completely, given them everything, all the trust to not destroy you, and then you feel sort of destroyed in that moment sometimes.
Yeah.
Transitioning from self into communication and connection with others, I thought it was beautiful how you put yourself in an uncomfortable position by exposing something truthful that had just happened that you went
Mm,
through. It was a perfect example. It was really great.
mm,
And I think the beauty in human beings that are they find it easier to connect with others is they're open about their quote unquote failures, the process of learning that they're going through. And they're able to connect with others because it doesn't matter how they look or how they seem or how perfect the other person might view them. What matters is honesty.
that's right.
I've
Yeah.
found that really hard, and it's something new for me to practice.
Right. I think that's that part because we still have a little bit of that inner critic or shame that comes up, that if I'm truly honest, people will go away. They won't like me. They'll judge me. And that is the part of like, I gotta, my relationship with myself, do I judge myself? That's if I don't judge myself and somebody judges me, oh well, like I can be sad about it, but the level that I'm attached to other people's approval, we call that, extrinsically, the value system, that if I am constantly behaving based on somebody else's approval as opposed to my intrinsic value system of myself, then I'm going to be constantly seeking approval, constantly, people pleasing in some way and not being honest and transparent. But I know when I call myself out, there's, especially like with apologies, it is very empowering because nobody's got anything on me. I just call myself out. You can't call me out. No, I did it first. So you can say whatever you want. I call myself out.
Have you
And
seen
so
that
that's
movie with Eminem where he
no,
does that? It,
which one?
it's 8 Mile, I think, is the name of
Yeah.
the movie.
Yeah.
And that he knows this rapper's gonna just trash him. He goes out and trashes himself, and then the guy chokes because he
There,
has nothing left.
there you go. Exactly.
I
Yeah.
love that.
And by the way, I grew up on 9 Mile in Detroit. So yeah, just
All
outside.
right.
That's how
That's
Detroit
cool.
would go. Yeah, 8 Mile, 9 Mile. Yeah, and that is it. That's when we call ourselves out, nobody else has it. So it is empowering. And if we call ourselves out, and again, like in a compassionate way, not a critical way, but a compassionate way, a humble human, that's very humbling. When people are humble, and it can be very powering. Humble people. When I think about a humble chief, Indian chief, not speaking much, but the humbleness, or the humbleness of some monks, but then the humbleness of just everyday human beings, that we can recognize that that's all we are, is just a human being trying to figure this out. Then it is gives us permission. It's inspiring when we're around other people like that. It gives us permission to be ourselves. So sometimes when I'm doing my work, I do self-disclose that I believe is beneficial for my client, and just to let them know, like, yeah, we're all doing our work. I'm just another human being walking with you. I might have some different insights because I studied this or I do this every day, but I am still a human being, and there's inspiration there. People can then relate. I want somebody that I can relate to. I don't want somebody that, you know, I I I respect people that go off in a cave for 40 years to achieve enlightenment. I know that's not an easy life, but a harder life is to come down from that mountain and now be in a relationship, have a family, have a partner, and then I'll read your book about enlightenment, and then we'll talk about it. So there's some of that aspect to me too. Is relationship is a spiritual path, man. It is everything that you want on a spiritual path. You got it right in a relationship. Compassion, patience, love, integrity, whatever is elements of a spiritual path, you got that opportunity right in your relationship. It's a wonderful field to work in.
While you were talking, I was reminded of the work of Ram Dass and his incredible story, his journey from being kicked out of Harvard to going to India, to finding a guru, to living that life and reconnecting with self. He got good in the head, right? He got good in the heart. He got good in the soul, good in the mind. And he came back and was immediately triggered as this highly spiritual being by his father asking a simple question. And it was hilarious, the story that he told and the
Yeah.
way that he shares his knowledge.
Yeah. I think it was he who said, if you really want to know where you are on your spiritual path, go home for about a week or two and see where you're at. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah. And I think it was also him that, and maybe I'm getting this wrong, that when we went out in the world, because was getting ready to go out in the world, and his guru, he was scared to go out back out in the world, and his guru would just look at him, and he looked him up and down every inch of his body, circled him, and then he looked at him and goes, "I see no imperfections," you know. If we can think of that as a human being, it's like, this is what we do, if we just become more conscious of our behaviors, and we know that there's forks in the road. I know there's times where, I watch this out, right there, people, watch where you're going. And if I'm focused more on sending out my communication and way less focus on how it's going to be received, because I have no control over how it's received. If I can focus, what's my alignment? Okay, honesty, compassion, clarity, whatever my alignment is, how I want to send out my communication. If I do that and somebody receives it adversely, okay, take a quick mirror back of myself. Did I send it out? Yep, I sent it out in alignment. I got to let them have their experience. And so I I really stress to people when they're, oh, I'm so afraid that when I have this conversation, my husband or my wife is going to react that way. I'm like, don't focus on their reaction. Focus on how you want to send it out. Just keep focusing on how you want to do that. What's your integrity that you'll do it? Keep focusing on that, not on how it's received. Yeah.
Other people's reactions has nothing to do with us.
Yeah. Wow.
When you were talking about Ram Dass's guru in that story, I love that story and I've heard it many times. And as part of a meditative practice, I actually envisioned his guru in my mind's eye out there in the universe, and I send him love and gratitude.
Mm.
And that's been a really beautiful practice for me. But it's interesting because the woman I'm married to now, we've been together 6 years, married for 3, and I call her my guru because
Mm.
the reason Ram Dass had that guru is because he was attracted to the unconditional love that didn't yet exist within himself.
Yeah.
And he expanded into that through the work of his guru. And for someone to tell you, I don't care how angry you are, I don't care what you're going through, I don't care what you do, I'm going to love you no matter what anyway. I see no imperfections in you. It's only you that see all of that within yourself. My wife gives me that.
Mm.
And
Oh, that's beautiful.
no other person ever has.
Mm.
And she's taught me unconditional love and how to give that gift to others as well. She
Mm.
provided an overflow that filled my cup. And now with that, I'm able to provide an overflow to everyone around me. And I'm just so grateful for this relationship that I'm in right now.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. What's her name?
Her name is Carla.
Mm.
Yeah,
All right, Carla. Good job, Carla.
yeah, she's incredible.
Mm.
Um, there's something that was interesting that I learned from Ram Dass as well. When I first started this whole good in the head journey, I started writing and putting content out there. I had people from all over the world reaching out and say, "Hey, can you help me?" And I'm all of a sudden, that empty place that I was trying to fill inside me, that void that was still unfilled, the inadequacy and the shame and the guilt. I was like, hey, if I'm a helper, maybe I can fill that. I'm going to
Mm.
help them. And so I elevated myself sort of above them as the helper, and they were the helpee, and it wasn't a very humble place from which to operate. And then I heard that story from Ram Dass where he said he admitted to actually sort of intentionally sabotaging some of his clients' recoveries because he needed to be needed. He needed to be the helper, and they didn't need
Right.
his help anymore. So he would
Yeah.
throw something into there and let it ruminate in their minds, and they'd come back and they'd need more help.
Mm-hmm.
Later, he said, to my shame and embarrassment, I did do that. But
Mm.
now it's all about empowering others to help themselves.
Yeah.
That's my mission in life now.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a helper. I just want to be a fellow traveler.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
That's why I think I aligned with your word, because you're humble, you're
Mm.
kind, you have generous conversations,
Mm.
and you empower people to help themselves and to communicate better and to connect on deeper levels and to really expand into what they truly are.
Mm.
So I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It's bringing me so much joy these days of with my podcast, Relationships Let's Talk About, has been out for 2.5, 2.5. No, it's actually 3 years now, 3 years. And I originally started it because my son, he's 25. He lives in Europe. He lives in Netherlands. And when I started it, he was a big podcast fan growing up, and I saw how it really took his consciousness to a huge level when he was 15, 16. And he would tell me, Dad, you need to do a podcast. And I'm like, ah, man, you crazy. I'm not gonna do a podcast. He's like, no, you're a good talker, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm not gonna do a podcast. And then it sank in me for a while, and I thought, wow, this is one way that he'll get to hear me if he wants to listen every week, because we're not physically around each other. And my focus around appreciations, like, why not be able to give him some of more of my knowledge in more concise or focused topics, so that it could be, let's say, a legacy for my family. I mean, I thought to myself, wow, I would have loved to hear maybe my grandfather talk about
Oh
aspects
yeah.
of what's so important in life over and over again. And so that's my main reason for starting the podcast. And then I saw how people started benefiting themselves from it, my listeners and so forth. And it truly is beautiful to like put it out, thoughts, feelings, conversations, musings, and know that, some little gem may be shifting and changing, and we have no idea what kind of domino effect. Somebody listening, they treat their kid that way, he treats their friends, their aunt, whatever domino effect that's out there. And it's very humbling to know that when I get feedback from people about certain ways that it's benefited them. That's the part, like you're saying, with Ram Dass, I'm feeling of, that's more what I want. I don't want to put myself out of a job in some way of a counselor. Is like, I want to give the seeds, and then we all can walk together, and people give me some wonderful seeds. So that's a humbling experience when we know that we're putting some things out that resonate with other people.
Absolutely. And I can guarantee you the ripple effects that you're causing in my life, the lives of
Mm,
everyone I touch, everyone I communicate with, they're
mm,
making a bigger difference than you'll ever know. So thank you.
mm.
Keep it up, man.
Yeah,
Unreal.
and you might feel this as doing your podcast, but there's times where, I used to do a podcast every week for 2 years, and then I needed a little bit of my life back, doing 25 hours of counseling during the week, and I was doing a podcast every weekend. So I started doing it twice a month, every other week, and there's sometimes when I do a solo cast that I'm up here in my studio, and it's 10, 11 o'clock at night, and all I got is my cat, that I'm talking to. And there's sometimes I'm going, man, like, this wears on me, this is a lot. And then I recognize, oh man, it's so juiced when I think about what benefits that are coming from it. And then that juices me, and I'm like, nope, I'm going to keep doing this. I'll keep doing it until I don't do it. And so, um, yeah, it's it's an honor in some ways to be able to put it out.
Imagine for generations to come that this is a creation that has been recorded and created specifically for loved ones to be able to learn from the wisdom and experience of others and
Yeah.
upgrade that much faster in their own personal realities. The
Yeah.
trajectory of their lives will be forever altered just by
Mm,
listening to one of your podcasts.
yeah.
Imagine
And it,
them really going deep and listening to all of them.
yeah. Yeah. It is kind of cool. And also to think about that, I tell personal stories in there, and tell personal stories with family and with friends, and try to be honest about that. And sometimes I just had a friend that I was in high school. I talked with her the other yesterday, and she said, wow, I didn't know that about you, about your parents' divorce and how that happened at that time. And so she wanted to be curious and know more about that, man. She felt closer to me just by that story. So stories really bring us closer, and when we are in our personal story, to be able to share who we are in a way of disclosing as the benefit of connection. It's a beautiful thing.
Wow. Now, I heard the story, but I'd love you to tell it again, if you would, on how you met your wife. You were in the corporate world and then,
Yeah. So I grew up in the Detroit area, and when I went to Michigan State and majored in social studies and also Japanese. And so I ended up uh, going to Japan and learning more about the culture and the language. And when I came back, I was in the corporate world in the automotive industry. And at that time, in the mid '80s, Japanese companies were coming into the States, and so my skills were highly touted in that way. And so for maybe about 8 years, I was kind of this young single corporate executive flying around, bumping heads with presidents and CEOs and stuff. And it fed my ego, but after a while it wasn't feeding my soul. And I recognized how I was compromising myself. And right at that time, my father died, and he was 57. I was 29. And I was really close with my father. I lived with him in high school when my parents were divorced, and that was like my spiritual awakening. His death enabled me to really understand that there's something beyond. There's an energy beyond, because the way that I would connect with him or think about life. And I at that last year that I was in my corporate life, I was going to Esalen Institute, which is a human potential learning center in Big Sur, California. And I was learning to meditate and other things. And finally, I just was feeling, wow, that this is more of my inner self. This is what I want to pursue. What? I don't know. So I decided to quit my corporate job, and then just said, I'm going to just start off at Esalen on my path, and wherever it goes, it goes. So I signed up for a 2-month workshop, and it's a work scholar program where you work like 20 hours a week, and you go to a certain workshop program with about maybe 25 people. So there's maybe about 100 people that are working on the work scholar level, and the staff and so forth. When I got there, I saw a name tag, and the name tag was mine, along with Ivana Jensen. And I thought, that's kind of strange. It's a single room with a woman. And, I looked around, asked a couple other people, like, you know, uh, same genders. And I'm like, okay, that's cool with me. I'll room with a woman. We were the only man and woman place in the room, whether, that doesn't matter for some people. For me, it was kind of cool. I thought, okay, my journey. Uh, and so I met her the second day I was there. She came a little late, and the gist of the story is basically we've been living together for 26 years, from the very first day we met. So I would love to have a time machine and go back and just look at it and go, be really sweet to me right now, because we're gonna be together for like the next 26 years at least. So that's how we started off our relationship. Was we
Huh.
lived together, we worked in the same work scholar program, we also worked in the garden and other places together, and we left Esalen after a little over a year, and started our life more as a couple and a family, and moved around. But we had the basis with Esalen of communication, of processing, of ownership of language, of self-awareness. And so it was a wonderful foundation to start off in a
Mm.
relationship. And so we were very, very fortunate to have that in our lives as starting off as a couple.
Wow, that is an incredible story. Just the fact that you quit the corporate world and all that money and security and wealth just to start all over and leave your life in the hands of source energy, or whatever,
Exactly.
God, universe. That's unreal. And for that to have unfolded as beautifully as it has, and for you to be doing your life's work, your passion project every day, what a
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah.
Do you
Because I
believe in?
didn't.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't know that I was going to be a counselor at all. It evolved from the interest, especially from the foundation with Esalen, and I learned Esalen massage, the body work, and I was doing that for a few years, but I didn't go back to get a master's for, I think it was about 596, maybe about 6 or 7 years after I left the corporate world, or at Esalen, to go back and get my master's. So I just followed this path, and it's served me well so far.
You seem to have been a really beautiful place in your life when you began your new life, your new journey. Do you believe in soulmates and twin flames, or do you think that a person that's truly whole and healed and working on themselves can get along with just about anybody, and that anyone that you're put with at that point, it's going to work out?
Uh, I do believe in, you got to have a good picker. I do think that I think I was in a place where I would have engaged in a interesting, maybe a healthy relationship, but I think there was something unique about having this individual in my life, and what we learned, and how she had a ticket to go back to Denmark after a month, and she was in the workshop for 2 months. And so it was pretty serendipitous, you know, to for us to come together, because I also think that we had a lot of differences. A boy from Detroit, girl from Denmark. She's an artist. I was a corporate thinker. We had a lot of these differences that co- created compatibility in some ways, but it was more about inspiration and learning from each other. So I don't think that if we didn't live together and kind of forced us to really pursue more of the interest, I don't know if that would have led into where we are. So I do love the serendipitous of how the universe brought us together, put us into that single room, and work through some of our stuff. And so I do believe in some way there's some magical things going on in the universe if we just are in the flow. And I do believe that I was able to receive it because of the place that I was in, because of letting go of a certain thought process, discovering and being really interested about myself and being honest and transparent. The, I toiled or was it like the soil? I made the soil good for that relationship to come in. So I think it's kind of a combination in many ways of us having to be in a good place to be able to receive a relationship that's also healthy.
And cultivating keep like compatibility is also an inside job that then we
Exactly.
emit outwards and attract
Yeah.
somehow spiritually or energetically, vibrationally, that which is meant for us to have.
Yeah.
Your
Right.
story is so beautiful. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing. Isn't it
Yeah.
incredible how the older we get, we can connect the dots backwards and sort of reverse engineer it all and see how perfectly all unfolded, for our
Yeah.
benefit.
Exactly. Yeah. It really is. And I even play it backwards where I told you my spiritual path really took a huge leap when my father died, and I was contemplating whether to leave the corporate world or not. I was really going through some struggle around it because I had a lot of potential, financial potential in other areas. And I was actually at Esalen on a weekend workshop. And I remember like looking up at all the stars, and I was talking to my father, and I was like, Dad, like what should I do? Like give me a sign, if I should leave, if I should make the decision to leave the corporate world and my job, give me a sign. And then I said, you know what, I want to make sure that you're talking to me, so give me a shooting star. And then I thought about, like, no, forget, no, give me two shooting stars. And right at that moment, Pete, a shooting star out came, another one crossed. It crossed each other. And every time I talk about it, I get my goosebumps are happening. And it was such a confirmation in so many ways of the connection of spirit, of the honest and the magic of life. But when I reflected back to it, is in hindsight, my father was actually saying, "Hey, X is the spot. Like here, like be at Esalen. Like you're gonna actually come back here." And it's beautiful, even like that when we, like you say, reverse engineer. You know, things just. Uh, that's why I say I love to say that expression: trust your life's path. You might not know it, but just trust your life's path. And as a parent, that's really important to me to trust my life's path as a parent and trust my child's path in their life.
Truly.
Yeah.
It takes so much courage to do that and then to jump.
Yeah.
Man, I
Yeah.
don't know how you did it. I don't know if put in the same position I could, I really don't. I would hope
Mm,
that I would,
mm,
and there are so many things intuitively that I listen to on a daily basis, like which way to turn at a stoplight, where to
right.
go, who to talk to, all these things that I listen now. It sounds kind of crazy maybe to some people, but I've learned to listen because it
Yeah.
always results in something beautiful.
Yeah. My wife, when I first met her, what was beautiful, she's a very feeling person. And she actually uses the expression when I first met her. She said to me one night, she said, "So do you feel for broccoli or do you feel for cauliflower?"
Huh.
And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?
In
Do
their
I feel
language,
broccoli?"
they
Yeah.
probably ask it like that, right?
Yeah.
That's
And I think
interesting.
also because she is a feeling person, she probably uses that in her language. So I actually try to really sit into that. Like, what does feeling for cauliflower really feel like? And after a while,
Yeah,
I started utilizing that in my vocabulary and really say that.
I
You know,
like
I
that.
ask people, what do you feel for? Do you feel for going on Monday or do you feel for going on Tuesday? Not do you want, what do you think, but what do you feel for? And I think in that general terms, if we do follow that in some way, you know, our intuition and what do we feel for, there's a resonance of a knowing that's ahead of ourselves. And that's the part, like you said, that can be really scary. It can be hard to trust that feeling, even because that feeling doesn't mean I know what's going to happen in the end. And I think that that's the beauty of life in some ways is I don't want to know. And so I don't want to manifest my life so much in detail that it becomes boring. I say, come on, universe, like throw me a huge magic bone so I can go, wow, how did
Yeah.
that happen? I
Oh,
don't
cool.
want to, I don't want to go through the pinhole. Yeah.
Pripo, that's gold, man. I love that.
Mm,
I've
yeah.
never heard that. And I
Mm.
listen to a lot of dang content. I used to live in Greece. I learned the language within 6 months, which blew me away because I really didn't consider myself very smart growing up. I mean, I did my best, but I was intent upon learning that damn language. I didn't want it to conquer me. I wanted to be able to learn it. And one of the most beautiful things that they say in Greek is instead of I miss you, they say you're missing from me.
Hmm. Oh, that's beautiful.
And I don't know why I get so emotional, but that's me and I love it. So whatever. If somebody has
Yeah,
a problem
man.
with my emotions, it's all good. I
It's
love you
not a
anyway.
problem at all, man. You know, that's the beauty. Like to me, when you're like that, that I trust you more. It's like you're in touch with those feelings. Be moved. If we're not moved by life, what the fuck are we doing here? It's like we got to be moved by life. There is that honest. And sure, I know that there is challenges and detriments and traumas. We had a baby die in birth 21 years ago. It was very, very challenging, heart wrenching, but it was the most beautiful experience of the level of my consciousness of recognizing I experienced life and death at the same moment. And so for me, trusting in that experience and not thinking that my life should be a certain way. I had a moment when the midwives were taking care of my wife and our baby girl River Hope was taken away. The EMTs came to our home because it was a home birth, and there was a moment where I could feel myself go down like this black hole, like literally like being pulled by the back of the head going down. And I'm so glad that I caught at that moment. I heard my son, he was 3 years old. I heard him giggling upstairs. And all of a sudden I started remembering what I had. My wife was in the bath with the midwives. And I thought, this is what I have. This is my reality. The illusion of me being a father to another child, having a daughter, that's illusion. That's not reality. So if I can stay focused on what I have and be open to the lessons of what is in front of me, the lessons for the next weeks that happened were phenomenal in that. So um, I it's hard to say whether I would trade. You know, sure, I would love to see what this being would be in my life and our lives, but I don't know if how my consciousness and where I am uh, that would have changed, and I wouldn't want that to change at all in that way. So I guess I give that example just in the way of a spiritual path or an honest authentic path is not all feel good. We go through things that human beings go through, and as we all know, if we want to be courageous, we got to have circumstances that give us opportunity to be courageous. It's not going to be fun if I say I want to be patient. Universe, give me patience. Well, it's going to go, all right, man,
Okay, here
here's
you
an
go.
opportunity, here you go. And so I think that we have to understand that we can have that agency by just being conscious and by being humble. And and not dictate and control, but just be influence and be in the flow as much as we can.
When you were describing that, telling me how you were almost pulled by a dark black hole, that darkness had you in its grasp and it was pulling you back, and you heard your son laugh. For a moment, I felt like I was there.
Mm,
And I felt some pain, but then I felt that giggle, and that brought me joy. I've been in a few circumstances in my life where I attempted suicide. And as I was beginning to pull the trigger or cutting with a knife or doing whatever I was doing at the time, the one thing that brought me back from that grasp was a vision in my mind's eye of my little boys. And man, I just came right back into the light. I had that bigger reason why to keep going. And if not for me, then for them and the legacy, that
mm,
I now strive to leave for them rather than that one that
right,
I'm proud of,
right.
for sure.
Yeah, yeah, right. Either way, you would have leave something for them to have to deal with, and now you're leaving. You've chosen another way for them to relate and deal with your story. Yeah.
I think that every human being, as part of the human experience, absolutely experiences battles and bouts with deep, dark depression, hopelessness, and moments in their lives where they just are giving up. And to have that big reason why to keep going, man, is so important. And
Yeah.
so, to everyone out there, if you don't know what that reason is, man, sit down, take a deep breath, and write down some big reasons why you're still around and keep going.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's, I think, we touched upon it in the beginning, and that's, to me, is why my practice of appreciation is so vital in my life. When people hear it, they say, yeah, yeah, yeah. I say thank you. I'm like, no, no. It's a practice, like a yoga practice, a meditation practice. It's a deep level of resonance. Appreciation is a sense that I value whatever it is that I'm feeling or focusing on, but I have to resonate with it. And when I cultivate appreciation, especially in my relationships, uh, that snowballs into aspects of being a human being and being so appreciative of having these experiences and being alive, as opposed to the opposite would be scanning what's not there, what's void, what's critical, what's there to blame, and so forth. And so the practice of appreciation, which I started many, many years ago, with my family. And it was actually more when I think I was always kind of an appreciative person, but the understanding of it was in my graduate program at Goddard College, when I developed a curriculum around appreciation for my master's program. And I started really studying it and really understanding the power of appreciation, the resonance of the heart field, and what that does in syncing of the cells of the body and the parasympathetic nervous system and the respiratory system, cardiovascular system. I was like, wow, this is like one of the healthiest things that you can do for yourself, is to be in the vibration of that, and not in a Pollyanny way, of really selecting specific, for me, it was specific memories, visions, behaviors of appreciation. And because then it brings the resonance. So I started practicing that with my family, and that transformed, brought us to another level. I call it, we do heart shares. My wife and I, we share appreciation. I do it with other people in my life, but you sit down and you just, for 10 minutes, you just share any kind of appreciation. And it gets to not just like, I really appreciate, that you're a good mother, but it gets to the point of like, I really appreciate the other day when our son was struggling and you were so patient with him, and you looked at him and you just allowed him to go ahead and voice his discontent with you, and you stayed there so strong. And afterwards you actually hugged him when he wasn't being so nice to you.
So
I
detail.
saw details, nuances, body sensations are so important. And when you do that for a period of time, like straight 10 minutes or so, you're cranking it up. And as a couple, I call it like your couple bubble. To me, that's the immune system. The couples have an immune system, and the appreciations are like the vitamins of the immune system. So what that means is when a disease comes in, which is of conflict or disconnect, we can allow the immune system to take it as opposed to going after the disconnect. So if I'm more in the realm of appreciation of my relationship, I'll be able to drop that disconnection faster and come back in connection faster. And then from that connection, we can then discuss and work through some of the challenging issues. So it's, to me, it's the most powerful thing that I have had in my relationship and the work that I do with people. So I guess to bring it around is that's one part that helps me stay in the path of also being a human being. How if I'm staying focused and feel it more, it doesn't mean that I don't feel shitty. It doesn't mean that I don't criticize, but I want to have more of that 5-to-1 ratio, more of that, because human beings take positivity like Teflon and negativity like Velcro. So we need to inundate the positivity for it to stick and change those neural pathways. So I really strive and stress that with people and couples. It's a huge focus and practice to have consistently in your life. Now, my wife and I, when we do heart shares, we do them for 20 to 30 minutes a piece. And it's easy and it's wonderful and it's connecting and it's awe-inspiring. And the one thing about that too, Peter, is we talked about the part of our own emotions. I need to know, I need to self-appreciate myself in those areas, because if I don't, when somebody appreciates me, I'm not going to take it in. So if I don't appreciate myself as a parent, when somebody appreciates me about my parenthood, I'm not going to take it in. I'm just like,
Yeah, to
yeah, yeah,
deflect it off like
deflect it
Wonder
off.
Woman's bracelet, right?
Exactly, exactly. So one of the hardest things I think human beings can do is actually receive appreciation. Breathe it in, really take it in, not have to give it right back, not have to deflect it, but actually give it in. Yeah.
That's actually kind of magical. I've never heard of that analogy about the immune system. Like I do a lot
That,
of things for my immune system physically, but
yeah.
I've never noticed, that we have an immune system that we could be up leveling within a relationship. That's
That's
brilliant.
my that's mine.
I like that, man. I like
Yeah,
that. I've
you could
never
take it.
heard
You
that.
could, yeah, you could take it. It just came to me one day that I just really realized, like, wow, that we are in this that we have this immune system going, whether it's in our relationships, whether it's a intimate relationships, our family relationship. Because I recognize that there is this part of ourselves that, um, like you said, we do so many things for our immune system physically, and we got to recognize, what are we doing on our relationships? if if we're feeding negativity and judgment and conflict, that's like putting really shitty things in our immune system. But
Yeah,
if we're instilling appreciation, patience, and love, that's feeding the immune system. And if the immune system is healthy, that's when it can take the challenges and disconnects. And so people that have more of that in their relationship navigate more challenging issues. And in my experience, they're able to stay together in their relationship even stronger.
just like the physical body was made to heal, I believe it's also true with relationships. Relationships were made to heal if we focus on up leveling the immune system of the relationship.
Right. Yeah.
So such a great analogy, man. And thanks
Yeah.
for the permission to take that and run
Yeah.
with it. I probably will.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'll
And
always credit you. So thank you.
and I think I'll put this out too, is I think that there's timing in our lives of how we choose to do that. Like you said, like we could always upgrade that in some way. And in my experience of working with couples, sometimes by choice, by not putting focus attention, relationships erode, and sometimes it's hard to repair that, just like at times probably with the body, if we don't take care of it,
Mhm.
for a long time. So I am a realist in that way of, I say relationships have a lifetime. They could be one day or they could be 60 years, but they all have a lifetime. And if we can recognize that and accept that at times, then we might not go through some struggles around resentments and doubts. But while we have it, we can put a good focus attention on it.
I was the last therapist I worked with was in 2014, and doing work with him literally led to the inevitable divorce with my third wife that I was eventually really grateful for. He told me in one of our sessions, he goes, "Look, after all you've told me and all I can understand, which is very limited, it's my opinion, and I don't ever tell this to anyone, that maybe you should separate or divorce and start working on you. You're a mess."
Mm,
I needed to hear that. I hated hearing it, but that
right,
was the truth.
right.
And that was the beginning of a new life, man.
Mm, yeah.
And I know that your parents divorced when you were 12 or 13.
Yeah.
You eventually lived with your father. Um, when my oldest was 10, my middle son was 7, and my youngest was 3, their mother and I separated and divorced. And for the first little while, I had them full time. And it was incredibly overwhelming because I was never present in our marriage or as a father. I was working 18 hours a day for years and years, just trying to make ends meet. And that didn't give me any time for self reflection or inner work
Right.
or um, drawing attention to trauma that had happened, different things like that. There was no healing. And the blessing and the gift that my ex-wife gave me was that separation. And more importantly, the presence of my sons in my life for that while that I had them full time. And eventually, we ended up splitting every other week and then
Mm,
every other 2 weeks. And it's funny, my 16-year-old, my youngest, when he was 16, just a few years ago, I looked at him and I said, you should be thanking me for the total train wreck that I was your entire life, because all along I showed you what not to do.
mm,
And I told him, now I'm going to start showing you what to do. Don't listen to my words. Watch what I do.
yeah. And that's what kids do. They watch what we do. They don't really listen to our words so much unless they like what we do.
Would have been good to know that before I ever started having kids.
Mm,
So much of what you're teaching and putting out there, so much of what I've learned today, I really wish I could have come across it at a much younger age and started practicing things like visualization and meditation and coping skills and communication, and especially appreciation. Self
yeah,
appreciation leads to the ability to appreciate others. And the more we can appreciate ourselves and love ourselves, I really believe it's true that we can appreciate and love others more and more.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
found some videos from 2009 from a workshop that you put on. They're both
Ah,
8-minute videos.
yeah.
And if, with your permission, I'll put them in the links in the show notes
Sure.
below. I watched those the other night and I was blown away. And it's
Mm,
true. What we focus on, we feed
yeah.
with our attention, with our time, with our energy, anything that we choose. And we are the choosers of what we think about and focus on, that expands. So appreciation, if you having marital issues or problems with anyone at work, or most importantly with yourself, start an appreciation practice. Set an alarm that goes off every day that says, reminder, time to self appreciate and compliment someone, appreciate someone else for something they did today.
Exactly. Yeah. Write it down. Look at that list. Feel it. Resonate so that when you are, because appreciation is also an individual job. If I if I'm staying more in appreciation of a thought about my wife, that when I come home, I'm going to come with that energy, as opposed to thinking I'm going to only appreciate it when I see her. Uh, Same thing happens with the opposite, like you're saying. Whatever you focus on expands. If I'm thinking of critical things about her and judgmental things, when I walk through the door, that's the energy that I'm going to bring. So it is an inside job for us to focus on that and to resonate inside of ourselves, so that that communication can come out that way. So it's a practice. That's why I say it's a practice.
You're a
Right.
great example of repetition begetting mastery. I look at you
Yeah.
as a master of communication. You're an empowering person to be able to speak with and
Mm,
practice and bounce things off with. And I highly recommend anyone who can connect with you in any way to do so. It's been an absolute joy and blessing for me coming
mm,
across your work and being able to speak with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. I really appreciate that you reached out and that we were able to connect and and from a humble way, I really appreciate that you did your research, about me, that you saw those videos, that you looked at my website, you heard a little bit about my story. That I feel seen, feel respected in that way, and so all of a sudden there's a closeness, in that way between us. Not just because you put some spotlight on me, but just the attention that I know I can feel inside of you as a human being, and that care and that consideration. So I very much appreciate that you took the time to want to know about me.
Believe me, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Hmm.
Now, you said that when you moved in with your father, he said there's three rules in my house:
Hmm.
communication, communication, communication.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
was that about? Where did that come from?
yeah. I was surprised as hell because my father wasn't this great communicator. I thought, wow, and what he what he meant by that, I think, was, I remember after he said that, a week or two after, he asked me, "So how was school?" I'm like, "It was fine." He's like, "How was school?" I'm like, "Fine." He goes, "Son, how was school?" And I would open up a little bit to him. And then I remember I reversed it. I'm like, "Hey, Dad, how was work?" "Oh, it was okay." "Hey, Dad, how was work?" And
As kids
and so
always
we start,
do.
yeah. So we started this, relationship about, like, just being honest. The thing about with my father, that um he was pretty set in his ways, and he had certain limitations, and he did was challenged by his own emotions. He went into a long depressive state and so forth. But the one the one aspect that, as a 58-year-old man now that I am, how deeply appreciated I am of this is, my father was a caring, affectionate man towards me and other people. My father never yelled at me, never laid a hand on me. He said, "I love you," almost every day, kissed me all the time. Actually, all the men in my family, my grandfathers, my uncle, my stepdad, they all were like that. I've never had any man in my life that I was afraid of, or exerted that kind of negative energy. So I see how uncommon that is being doing the work that I'm doing and so forth. So the gift that my dad gave me was the affection and the vulnerability of being a man, with love. When I would play baseball as a young kid, my dad would come sit down next to me on the bench, give me a kiss, put his arm around me, and I was never embarrassed about it. You know, I thought it was just fantastic. So when I would look at my friends, whether they were judging me or not, I'm like, "You guys don't get this. I get this. This feels great." So he gave me that gift, and which I was so grateful that I can pass that on to my son, and to help him feel loved and cared for by another man in his life, in a tender way. And so I saw that as a real strength in my father, not at all as a weakness. And I think that combined with his openness around wanting to hear what I was going through, and be there presently for me in those years of high school and so forth. It was a tremendous gift.
That's massive. That resonates with me because from what I remember, my childhood, my teenage years growing up, I was in a home and my parents were very loving, very affectionate. And I feel like I received more of that than anything growing up. And it was something that I was then able to pass along to my children. So I'm truly grateful for the gift that they gave me in that regard as well. They later divorced when I was 18, and I didn't yet realize how scared, how broken they were from their past trauma and in
Right.
their lives. But to see how far they've come and the people they are now, I'm just so honored and blessed to have them as parents. And I really mean that.
Mm. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And I think that was the part with me of seeing my parents were broken and they were not capable, and chose not to have a healing or positive aspect of their divorce. And I remember as a teenager, a young adult, having resentment about that. And I had to work to really let go of that resentment, and to really look at, especially with my father, how he was really able to give me all of that other aspect of love and attention, and even with my mother, of the way that she cared for me, and would be thoughtful and kind, even with maybe her challenges or ways that we didn't get along. So I really wanted to, again, see some aspects of the appreciation, the positive aspects of who they were, not just dwell on only what I didn't get from them or what they passed on that was pretty shitty. And the beauty of it is, I didn't know that I was going to utilize their experience, my experience of divorce, and become a couples counselor. you know. So I'm sure that had something to do with it, that I could maybe make a difference and influence people, because I wasn't able to experience some of that in my life, or help my parents. And so now I'm able to do that for other people.
And again, the ripple effects that you're causing and creating because of that, that is going to just go out forever and expand into the lives of others. And then as they all interact with this new knowledge and all these new skill sets, it's going to make a massive impact. I just love
Mm,
that about the human experience, that
yeah.
one person can make such a massive impact.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
One thing that my parents did for quite a few years after their divorce, they remarried a year and a half after they were divorced to other people, incredible people. And that was a blessing as well. But something I learned not to do from them is they would pick at each other, to us, behind each other's backs.
Yeah.
They both did it, and that's a normal human response. The guilt, the shame we were talking about at the beginning. And after the divorce from my boy's mother, I promised myself that never in front of them would I ever demean, diminish, criticize, or nitpick, or condemn or judge her in any way in front of them ever, because of the damage and the trauma I experienced, every single time they did that over the years. And now it's been like, what, 25 years ago, we all kind of got together, collaborated, and we're like, let's tell them to stop, because
Hmm.
hey, I'm half you, I'm half you. You taught me so much, both of you. And when you talk crap about the other one, that's almost like damaging to me, as a child or even as a young adult. And when they realized that, they began new practices, and they stopped harping on each other. And again, what we focus on, we feed, and
Right.
love began to grow and expand within the family again, instead of trauma. and
Right.
and that was beautiful. It was a gift to be able to experience that, go through it, and then learn from it, and readjust and recalibrate and adapt to new ways of being.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah.
What are some of the most challenging situations you've come across in your life, in your career, and what have been the most significant expansions that people have made from a slight shift in consciousness, self-awareness, perception, or beliefs or habits that
Mm,
you've seen, that you've been most blown away by?
mm. Well, I think I'll start with that latter part. I think when people recognize, uh, to not target their suffering for external circumstances or other people, and they really start taking accountability, like that this is their life and they've made choices, or the way that they're behaving, um, and they really take ownership of it, that a light bulb just totally goes on inside of them. And usually, if they haven't recognized that before, it's like learning to ride a bike. It's cellular memory. It doesn't go away. It gets challenged, of course, but that I love when there's a level of awareness and consciousness that people say, like, I'm going to take accountability and responsibility, and that they're humble in taking that ownership, and not feed into, again, that constant cycle of blame and critique. And that's awe-inspiring to me, especially when it's been going on for years and years and years, and they take that responsibility. And even sometimes with we talked earlier about when a relationship maybe is at a point where it can't be resuscitated, and one partner is no longer wanting to work, it is inspiring when there's acceptance in that, and then they can decide. I did a podcast with a divorce attorney, and it was called "Breakups and Divorces: Endings Are Important as Beginnings." And I recognize that there's a shift there. Okay, so you don't have to do it like we see in the movies. We don't have to have it contentious. We don't have to do it like the way that my parents did it. How do you want to do it? You guys get to create how you want your legacy right now. Your ending is your legacy. What are you going to give to people around you, your family, your kids, other people? How are you going to be with each other? And that to me is when that happens, and it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen when people really shift to being caring. Because they, a lot of times people come into me and I say, why are you here? And they say, well, we love each other. I'm like, okay, I get this, but let's get that off the table, because you sure aren't acting loving to each other. So, and when they're breaking up, there's a part of like, what, can't your love transform? It doesn't have to be in the form of partnership, but it sure can transform. If you didn't know how to love each other in that way, can you love each other in another way without the attachment of what you want from each other? So to me, that's
Oh,
very awe-inspiring when that does happen, because that's the selfless self that comes up, and that then they're in the realm of true love in that way. So I would say that that's probably, in the work that I do, the most awe-inspiring that I do see.
I bet you see a lot.
Yeah, yeah. It it is beautiful. It's hard when a lot of people want to do that, um, but their actions and their habits and their patterns can be too strong for them to actually change that. So some of the things that we've been talking earlier in this podcast of the work and the self-awareness and the self-soothing, and all of that practice has to take place to get to what we're just talking about. People can make the decision in their minds, but unless they're doing the practice every day and watching those old patterns come up, and those old self-limiting beliefs that are coming up, and those old hurts, they got to keep with the practice of the awareness of bringing the accountability and the compassion and the self-appreciation and so forth. So when somebody is really working it, man, it's so inspiring to be around somebody else that's really working their life. Yeah,
Even when it's ugly, it is still
exactly.
so inspiring.
Yeah, it really is. I yeah, I get juiced. Like, when I'm with somebody or a couple that I know that I'm working harder than them, it gets really funky. And now, being a seasoned therapist, I tell that people right off the bat. Say, hey, I just want to tell you, I'm not going to work harder than you guys are. So I'm just letting you know that.
That's
Just letting you
fair.
know that if you work hard, I'll work hard with you. I'll help give you jump starts, and I'll be there, but I'm not going to do your work for you.
That's brilliant. Right
And
up front, the commitment level.
right, exactly. So
And usually, most people that come to therapy separately or together, they are committed to up leveling
yeah,
any way they can.
right. Yeah. But I will tell you, there are some people that come to couples therapy at times to not do the work, to also prove that the relationship is already done. Oh, we went to couples therapy. Oh, how many times? Oh, twice. And like, okay. So you really didn't do the work. You just wanted to justify. So I think it is depending on, if some people don't really know what it takes, to really do the work. That it's a moment to moment awareness and focus. But when people are really doing that and they're committed, it's a beautiful symbiosis relationship, between a therapeutic relationship. So I get really juiced by that. I'm getting juiced by more younger people really doing work, people in their early
Yeah,
20s and
man, that's
and so
inspiring.
forth. It is really inspiring. I am so juiced. I'm fortunate. My son is 25. I just absolutely adore him, and he's so he's such an inspiration to me. And his my daughter-in-love, his girlfriend, that they've been together 5 years. His name is Xander. Her name is Emma, and they're living in Netherlands. And she is incredible. I wouldn't have been able to paint a picture of a daughter in my life as her. So I'm blessed with that way. But when I see their awareness and the work that they're doing and how they're living their life, and how they're getting inspired. And it's a beautiful thing too, because I know, and they've told us how our relationship, my wife's and my relationship, has inspired them and so forth. And we cultivate an appreciation practice. um, my when my daughter-in-law Emma was here visiting us for a couple months, a couple times, we had mason jars, and we wrote hundreds of appreciation notes and would put them in the mason jars. So we all had our own jars full of appreciation notes from the each person in the family.
Wow.
And we sat down and had these appreciation heart shares. And her and I, we exchange on Signal voice messages, 3, 4, 5 minute voice messages weekly of appreciations and exchanges of heartfelt. And so for me, having young people, it gives me hope for, how messed up we can think the world is, and how in dire straits in certain areas. But when people in the younger generation have this capabilities of this new chip, I call it, kind of like, this installation chip of being able to have this awareness and really working it, it's so helpful. So when I'm working with younger people, whether it's individuals or younger couples, with the awareness that is coming in these generations, I'm inspired. I actually see the opposite. There's people that call some of the younger generation out of touch and so
Yeah.
forth. I
Yeah.
don't see that. I'm maybe it's where I live, or maybe it is, Pete. Like, that's what I scan for. I scan for more of that. I don't scan for, the people that are not awake and so forth. I'll have more compassion for that.
In my opinion, confirmation bias can have a very positive meaning as well. And that's, you
Yeah,
just defined it. If
yeah,
we get more of what we look for and appreciate,
yeah. Right.
what amplifies in our lives is what we activate
That's
through our
right.
thinking and our heart set and our soul. I
Yeah,
really believe that our true identity, the vibrational, energetic, whatever you want to call it, our true identity is love. And it's
yeah,
encased within this human body, this little VR suit, this meat suit, whatever you want to term it.
yeah,
And if we can find ways to realign with our true self as love and connect in as many ways as possible with everyone and everything that is living within this physical realm in love, like the fact that you just called his girlfriend your daughter in love, that is telling to me on what kind of a relationship that you tend to cultivate with others at all times.
mm, yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen you and your wife reacting or interacting together, in some of your videos on Instagram,
Hmm.
and it's beautiful to watch. And it's a great example of how to be, in my opinion, for anyone who's looking to enjoy a more beautiful relationship with a loved one. Um, Now, are there any other tools, tips, tricks, life hacks, anything that you would share with someone who's having a difficult time in their relationship? Where do they start? What do they implement? What do they begin doing over the next few months and into the years to come?
Hmm. Well, what's coming to my mind uh, is really cultivating a deep listening skill. We don't do that so well as human beings, and I think in any relationship that is in depth and is on a level of cultivating that love and depthness, a listening skill is so vital. And what I mean by that is being really curious and interested of what the other person's experience is, and not arguing realities, but being more curious, especially about somebody's emotion.
Mhm.
Somebody's angry, you don't question whether they're angry. Ask them, tell me more about your anger. And then that's not an easy thing to do, because when we're listening, we've got our own tape going. You were going, it was Tuesday, not Wednesday. I did not say that. We want to, jump in there. But when we're doing that, we're not being present with another person. So I see that go on a lot, back and forth. People, when people are activated and they're hurt, they're both trying to tell each other and to be seen and heard. My experience is that you got to let one person go at a time. It's like two people are jumping on stage and they're trying to get the spotlight. You can't have that. So if they're able to cultivate where, okay, all right, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to be the one that's going to listen, validate, acknowledge, being curious. So now you feel that. So now you have room for me. Maybe not right after. Maybe we'll wait a couple hours. Maybe we'll wait a day. But when you have room, then I'm going to be heard and respected more. So that's something that people have a really hard time doing, and we have to take turns in that. We've got to be cognizant around that. Okay, I'm going to take the bullet. I'm going to be the one that not going to be right now, and I'm going to be the one that listens and validates and acknowledges, knowing that I'm going to be able to get that from me. I'll ask for it. I'll I'll do it in a way that my partner comes towards me. So for me, big hacks are around, for instance, like two questions I think are really vital to ask. What am I doing that's making it difficult to get what I want? And what can I do to make it easier to get what I want? When I mean to get what I want, it's love, connection, respect, so forth. So if I'm constantly thinking, what people that situation that just happened that I believe my wife is wrong and so forth. Wait, if I can sit back and go, what did I just do that makes it difficult to get what I want? Ah, I interrupted her. Ah, I rolled my eyes. Ah, I did. If I'm aware of those things, then I can reverse those things or not do those things. Now, what do I do to make it easier to get what I want? Ah, if I'm asking questions, if I'm saying the words that actually are bringing her closer to me instead of pushing her away, if I'm going to say something, but then put a but in and then tell her what she's not doing in order to kind of feel like I'm superior. So uh, I think that those two questions, when I'm constantly asking that, I don't want to give a guarantee, but I would say 95% of relationship issues can shift if you're constantly asking, if each person is constantly asking those questions, because relationships are a dance, and we're in a system. When one part of the dance shifts, it has to shift. In what direction? I have no freaking idea. But what does Mel be like? Okay, let me do my dance differently. If I do it differently, it will change. And a lot of people don't do that. They just keep doing their same dance. They're waiting for the other person to change, or they change maybe a little bit. I'm like, no, you gotta be consistent in your change, and then you'll know if the other if it doesn't change in the direction that is serving you. Fine, you got to make some decisions that might be hard, but that's empowering. If I know that I'm going to change my dance, and if I change my dance, things will shift. I'm not going to give away my power in that way. So I think that that's a vital one for people to understand, and it will shift consciousness, and we'll get out of the victim mode. Oof, like we know what that happens in relationships. We'll get out of being disempowered, and then you'll have an equal partnership more in that way.
Wow. That reminds me, I set an alarm about a month ago to go off every single day while at work, just as a reminder, trying to habituate it that, it says, what do you want more of? Refocus.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that has been a really great way to, oh yeah, I'm thinking about something I don't want more of right now.
Right. Exactly.
How can I make my relationship better? How can I be a better man? How can I be a
Yeah.
better father? What
Exactly.
should I be listening to
Yeah.
and paying
What kind
attention
of partner do I want to be? That's the thing. Like, what do I want to be? Not what do I want? What do I want my part? How do I want to be? And if I'm visualizing myself be that, it's going to be a lot easier for me to be that way. And I think that that's so important for people to feel that empowerment of, and if you don't, then go ahead and if you don't know, find a mentor, watch certain movies that you go, oh, that's the person that I want to be to
to. Yeah.
do that. Because that's so important, is that we change and we look to do those things that will influence the other person. I did a podcast called Micro Moments, and to me, that's also a relationship hack. We have all of these moments in our relationship that we think that we're got to grab that date night, or we got to have this really intense conversation to go deep into intimacy. But most relationships are in the mundane. If you're in a long-term relationship, it's in the routine, and we have to wake up to those routines, that there's micro moments in those routines of connection. If
Yes.
I'm walking by when my wife is doing dishes in the kitchen, and that right there's a micro moment. Do I go ahead and put my hand on her back? Do I kiss her neck and go on? When she's in the bathroom and I walk in, that's our relationship. How do I want to show up? How do I talk to her? What way do we connect? There are all these micro moments, and we have to have those micro choices to show up in those micro moments. And when people do that, it can really transform their relationship instead of thinking that they have to wait for these big shifts of attention. The more micro moments that you give, the easier it is going to be and not have those big expectations when you do go out on your date night and so forth. You'll be connected in that way. A micro moment that I have is I have an hour commute to my office. When I come back and I drive in my driveway, I used to just get out in the car and go in. Now in the last few years, I have recognized, wait a second, uh, I can shut off my car. I could take 20 seconds or 30 seconds and just think, hey, people, wait a second. The most important people right now that's in your life are right in that house. You can let go of all those conversations that you had today, all of that stuff, and figure out how do you want to be when you walk through that door. How, uh, my my intention is going to override neutrality. They don't know what's going on. I know what's going on. I could be patient. I could be funny. I could be caring. I can be compassionate. I can be all those things when I walk into the door. And that moment of rendezvous of transition is so important in relationships. That could, 15 seconds of that transition is set for us how we're going to be in the next hours. So that's a little biohack, relationship hack. Just in that, it's intention. So a lot of people don't recognize how intentionality is so important.
Intention is energy that just expands exponentially. I've
Yeah.
noticed that.
Yeah.
Wow. You mentioned mentors, and I remember in 2014 starting over, I actually started listening to content by Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn,
Yeah.
John Earl Schoaf. I ended up coming across Tim Ferriss, and then was turned on to a podcast called Impact Theory
Mm,
with Tom and Lisa Bilyeu. They're the ones that sold their company for $1 billion, the Quest nutrition bars and all the food products they put out. And then with that money, they could have done anything. They could have gone to an island or, and lived happily ever after. But instead, what they did is they created a studio within their home in Beverly Hills and introduced the most prolific guests they could find, well researched, into their home to create content. And I've listened to almost every single one of the hundreds of
mm,
podcasts they put out now. They've got Impact Theory. She does a show called Women of Impact. And then they do one together called Relationship Theory.
mm,
And of course, Conversations with Tom is another one. But it was in relationship theory that I started realizing that I have some improving and growing to do, which is partly why I reached out to you. I was like, here's a master I can learn from. This is someone that can be a mentor in an area I wish to expand further into. And it's been a gift to be able to go to work every day. We work in a factory, and for 8 to 10 hours a day, we use our hands and we work away, and we're able to actually listen to music or
mm,
content. We can converse with employees, whatever we want. But I chose 4 years ago, after I finally got the job down, to download 8 to 10 hours of content daily. And
wow.
the first week, I was exhausted after just 1 2 hour podcast. I couldn't do it for a couple more days. And then I introduced another podcast. Pretty soon, 8 to 10 hours a day was no problem. Within 2 months, I was like, oh, I got to have more. I can't get enough books on audio. YouTube Red is what I bought so that I could download what I wanted to program my mind with, and then only listen to that the next day or in that week. And
Mm,
that has been one of the biggest gifts of my life, to be able to intentionally, strategically place into my mind where I want it to go.
nice.
So I'm
Nice.
excited to listen to this one over and over and sit down, take notes, and I'll be listening to this a few times this next week just to learn more from you and
Mm,
set some alarms and implement some of the teachings that you've brought up in this podcast so that I can really try expanding into more of the who I identify as while I'm in this body, so that I can be a better father, a more present husband, which I have a lot of work to do in that area,
mm,
and to really upgrade and up level every aspect of my life. And because of you, I now have the opportunity to do that in many different ways. You've shared a lot of great tools. So thank you.
mm. Thank you so much, Pete. Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah, I appreciate what you do.
Here we are, October 31st, Halloween Day, 2021. I know that you've got some workshops coming up. And if you could share different ways for people to contact you, how to follow you, social media, and different ways that they can learn from you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have a live Zoom workshop coming up for couples. It's called The Power of Appreciation. So what we talked about, it's a 4-hour workshop. I did it last week, and I'm going to do another one November 6th, Saturday, November 6th coming up. And it's between 1 and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to know more about that, that is on my website, pripo.com. It's pripo.com. You can click on the Relationships Let's Learn About It page and the online courses. I'll be giving more online courses live and just virtual. And the art of apology is going to come up in probably February or March. But this Power of Appreciation workshop is coming up next weekend, and I love, that's my bread and butter. I just absolutely love doing that workshop. People can follow me on Instagram at Pripo Teplitsky, Pripo Teplitsky. I am actually going to be, this is the first time I'm announcing it. I'm going to be opening up a coaching practice as well as my therapy practice. It's going to be called Way Beyond Coaching and Consulting. And it's going to enable me to actually work with more people, because right now, because of cross-state licensure with being a licensed counselor, I can't work with a lot of people and that live in different states and so forth. So I'm going to be focusing on relationship counseling and a lot of the different topics from my podcast, whether I work with people individually or I'm going to start some groups on certain topics, and that we'll be able to do it virtually. So if people can stay tuned to my website, I'll be probably putting that together in the next few months.
Awesome. How exciting.
Yeah.
I really believe that the work you're doing is going to make a massive impact in the lives of many and in the lives of the people that they interact with in new ways
Mm,
because of the skills that they can learn and start to implement and practice through your teaching. So keep
thanks.
doing what you're doing, man. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
I'm using it.
And
Going
Pete,
to
I
use it
just
more.
want to just that I don't think I plugged that my podcast, Relationships. Let's talk about it. So that's also we talked about it many ways, but that it's called Relationships. Let's talk about it. Got about 147 episodes on all the different podcast platforms. So that's a way for you to listen, get more of a hit of me, learn more things. Yeah. So
Awesome. And I've
mhm.
listened to quite a few of those. And anybody who's interested in small blurbs or tidbits or little bites of the bigger meal, check out his Instagram, follow him on there, and start receiving some awesome, empowering downloads and different tools that you can practice within your own life. I know that I've already used a few and they've really helped me out. I used appreciation yesterday a few times with my our daughter and son-in-law and my
Mm,
wife, and it changes the energy in the home. It
yeah,
really does.
it does.
So
Yeah.
it's so cool. So to all those listening, thank you so much for joining us today on the Good in the Head podcast. I appreciate and love every single one of you. Thank you so much, Pripo. I love you and I love the work you're
Thank you,
doing.
Pat.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
man.
much.
Thank you, brother. Yeah.
And, please check out all of Pripo's work on his website and Instagram. Follow him, check him out, and visit goodinthehead.com and go to the menu. We've got many different self-awareness challenges, opportunities to research new habits, to implement different perspective shifts that will absolutely empower anyone willing to try them out to upgrade their own self-perception and the way they interact with everyone and everything in the world. And as a result, up level their personal reality. Keep going, keep doing what you're doing. If you're hopeless, know that bad times don't last. Things always change. This life is a dance, as Pripo pointed out, and it's up to us to make it as beautiful a dance as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Hmm.